Hello all, and welcome back to another Earthen Rangers video. This is a continuation of the edible, medicinal, and survival uses of wild plant series. And today we're going to be taking a look at a plant that we're going to categorize under that series, but it's definitely not edible, medicinal, and it really doesn't have any survival properties. And we're actually going to be taking a look at a very toxic plant, a plant called the Parsley Hemlock. Now the reason why we're going to be talking about this plant today is because it's just as important to know those highly toxic plants as it is to know the edible, medicinal, and survival uses plants. The reason is if you know and have a great relationship with the toxic plants, you'll know not to harvest them. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these properties of the Parsley Hemlock. This is essentially a field of Parsley Hemlock, and we're going to start with the flowers. For those of you that have seen the yarrow video, which has clusters of white umbelled flowers, this plant has clusters of white umbelled flowers as well. And again, this is the toxic Parsley Hemlock. And so you can see these clusters here. I'm going to do my best not to touch the plant because I'm quite a distance away from any place where I could wash my hands. And another reason why it's really great, just real quick before we get into the rest of the properties, to know this plant is because you might see something like this Italian thistle right here. And Italian thistle does have edible and medicinal properties. However, this would not be an Italian thistle that I want to harvest because it is growing right next to a field of Parsley Hemlock. Thus, this plant, the Italian thistle, might have picked up some of the oils, and it might actually have a toxicity level to it. A lot of times after the big rains that we've had this year in California, I've been seeing a lot of miner's lettuce grow right next to shoots of Parsley Hemlock, and a lot of people are familiar with miner's lettuce and might just pick it up and eat it, but you definitely don't want to harvest any miner's lettuce that's growing right next to and or touching any Parsley Hemlock. Really, really important. So let's go ahead and take a look at the leaves of the Parsley Hemlock. As you can see, it looks a lot like parsley or carrot tops. And this is very characteristic of Parsley Hemlock. Now let's look at these veins on the stems. And as we go down to the bottom, you can start to see these red, blotchy stems. And on the Parsley Hemlock, this is actually called the blood of Socrates. And as some of you might know, Socrates, the philosopher, killed himself with a tincture of Parsley Hemlock because it is that deadly. So really, really important to know. And I wish you guys could smell this area because it just smells super fragrant with Parsley Hemlock. Some people describe it at certain times of the year as smelling like a rotting corpse. But I don't notice that a lot. That might just be personal opinion on how the plant smells. Right now I'm smelling a lot of these flowers, and they don't smell bad. It smells kind of good. But again, I wouldn't want to walk into this field of it. There's been people that have gotten really sick just from skin exposure, such as walking through a field of Parsley Hemlock in things like shorts or a dress, and getting a lot of oil, Parsley Hemlock oils on their skin, which absorbs into the skin. So even if you're just traveling through the forest, it's really important to know this plant. Really, really important. So let's take a couple look at some other plants here, and just so you get an idea of what Parsley Hemlock looks like at different stages of its life. So as you can see, we have some very tall, mature plants here that are flowering and seeding. But down here, we have some very young plants growing. And these plants do not have any flowers on them yet. However, they're still just as deadly. Actually, this one has a little cluster of flowers right here. And really important to talk about this plant because there's a lot of lookalikes to this plant. There's things like Queen Anne's lace, osha, cow parsnip, biscuit root. There's a lot of species that look like the Parsley Hemlock. Even things like fennel and sweet anise, same plant, look very similar to Parsley Hemlock from the untrained eye. Even though the flowers are different color and the leaf texture is totally different, but still really, really important. I'm going to take you guys over here so you can get a couple more examples of the Parsley Hemlock. Here are a couple little babies, but they are just as deadly. This is one of the most deadly plants in California, if not the most deadly plant. And so again, this is not a plant that you want to be consuming or even touching. If you have this plant in your yard and you're trying to remove it, wear gloves, wear clothing that covers all of your body, wash that clothing really well after, wear goggles. You don't want to get the juice in your eye if you're cutting it down with like a weed whacker or something. So really, really an important plant to know, and I honestly feel that knowing the toxic plants in your area is just as important as knowing the edible, medicinal, and survival uses plants, because that's going to really help protect you and keep you safe when you're harvesting these plants. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this special and unique series of plant video. And stay tuned, because in just a couple days we're going to have another plant that will actually have edible, medicinal, and or survival uses. But again, this is the Parsley Hemlock. There's a big beautiful field of it. I've actually never seen Parsley Hemlocks growing this tall, but that's just because of all the intense rain followed by the intense sunshine that we've had this year in California. So it's huge. It's like 14, 15 feet tall. It's amazing. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this toxic plant series. And as always, stay aware and protect.